The galaxy had a name for her. Not a title, not a rank, a warning. The alien queen. Entire civilizations had rewritten their histories, just to erase the memory of her passing. Star systems went silent at the mention of her fleets. Empires surrendered before her shadows even touched their skies. She did not negotiate. She did not hesitate. She ended things. And now she stood on Caris 9. The battlefield was still burning. Wreckage from a dozen species littered the cracked surface. Twisted metal, shattered weapons, and bodies that no longer had names. The air shimmered with heat and radiation, turning the horizon into a broken mirage. This had once been a strategic world. Now it was a grave. Her forces stood behind her in absolute silence. Towering warforms, bioengineered soldiers, living weapons that had never known defeat. None of them moved. None of them spoke, because their queen had stopped walking. At first, they didn't understand why. There was nothing left here worth claiming. No resistance. No survivors. Just the quiet aftermath of extinction. Then they heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Soft. Weak. Crying. One of the commanders stepped forward, scanning the ruins. "Life sign detected," he said, his voice edged with confusion. Human. The word carried weight. Humans were new to the galactic stage. Fragile. Short-lived. Chaotic. A species that burned bright and died quickly. Most considered them insignificant. Most. The queen said nothing. She moved. Each step was deliberate, slow. Her presence bending the air around her like gravity itself. The ground seemed to recoil beneath her feet, as if even the planet feared her touch. Her guards followed at a distance, uneasy. They approached a shattered transport, its hull ripped open, its interior exposed like a wound. Smoke curled from its remains, and inside, something moved. The crying grew louder. The commander raised his weapon. "Permission to terminate," he said. "It's likely the last survivor." The queen didn't stop walking. No. The single word cut through the battlefield sharper than any blade. The commander froze. No one questioned her. No one dared. She reached the wreckage and stepped inside. The heat, the smoke, the destruction, none of it mattered. Her gaze fixed on a small shape curled beneath a broken panel. A child. Human. Covered in ash. Trembling. His tiny hands clutching at nothing as if trying to hold onto a world that no longer existed. The queen stood over him. For a long moment she did nothing. This was the being the galaxy feared. The destroyer of worlds. The end of empires. And yet, faced with something so small, she hesitated. Behind her, the commander spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, it is irrelevant. A remnant. Shall we proceed?" Still, she did not answer. The child stirred. Slowly, weakly, he looked up. His eyes were wet with tears. His face streaked with dirt. But there was something else there. Not fear. Not the blind terror that every other creature showed when they looked at her. Just confusion. He blinked. And then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, he said, "Mama." The word hit harder than any weapon. The guard stiffened. The commander's grip tightened. But the queen did something no one had ever seen before. She knelt. The motion was slow, almost unnatural, as if the universe itself resisted it. The being who had never bowed to anyone lowered herself before a child. The boy didn't move away, didn't cry out. He simply reached out a small, shaking hand and touched her. A collective breath was held across the battlefield. "Impossible," someone whispered. The queen looked down at the tiny hand resting against her armor. Something shifted, deep within her. Something ancient, something forgotten. Carefully, almost uncertainly, she reached out in return. Her hand, capable of crushing starships, closed gently around the child. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around her. The crying stopped. Silence spread. And in that silence, the queen made her decision. "I will take him." The words echoed like a shockwave. The commander stepped forward, unable to hide his alarm. "Your Majesty, this is a human. The council will." "I am not the council." Her voice was calm, final. There was no anger in it, no threat, and somehow that made it more terrifying. The commander hesitated. "They will see this as weakness." For the first time, the queen turned her head. Not fully. Just enough. And the look she gave him was enough to silence entire worlds. Then let them. No one spoke again. No one moved. The queen rose, the child held securely in her arms. He was small against her, fragile in a way nothing in her world had ever been. But he didn't look fragile. Not as he clung to her. Not as he buried his face against her and whispered something too soft for anyone else to hear. She turned away from the battlefield, away from the destruction, away from the war. "Prepare for departure," she commanded. The order rippled through her forces instantly. But the campaign, the commander began, is over. Just like that, a war that had consumed entire systems ended. Not with victory, not with annihilation, but with a choice. As the queen walked toward her ship, the sky above began to darken with the movement of her fleet. Massive vessels shifted into position, their shadows swallowing the broken world below. The survivors, those few who still watched from hiding, would tell the story later. Not of the battle, not of the destruction, but of what they saw at the end. The alien queen, carrying a human child, leaving, and for the first time in galactic history, she took something instead of destroying it. Far above, as the flagship opened its gates, the commander looked back at the ruined planet, then at the child in her arms. A human, small, insignificant, dangerous. He didn't understand it. None of them did. But as the fleet vanished into the stars, a single thought lingered in his mind. This wasn't mercy. This wasn't weakness. This was something far worse. Because for the first time, the queen had chosen to protect something. And whatever she chose to protect, the galaxy would never be able to take away. The galaxy did not celebrate peace. It feared it. Because wars did not simply end, not like that. Not without a final strike, a final domination, a final declaration of victory. But the alien queen had done the unthinkable. She had walked away, and she had taken a human child with her. They called it many things. An error, a weakness, a flaw in an otherwise perfect ruler. But the name that spread fastest across the stars was simple: the mistake. The Galactic Council convened within hours. Ancient beings, machine intelligences, and rulers of 1,000 species gathered in a chamber carved from starlight itself. Each of them had faced the queen in some form, through war, through diplomacy, or through loss. None of them had ever seen her change. "This is unacceptable," one elder hissed, its form shifting with agitation. "Humans are volatile, unpredictable. They are primitive," another added, "emotion-driven, violent even among themselves." And now, a third voice cut in coldly. "One is being raised by her." Silence followed. No one needed to say her name. "The implications are obvious," the first elder continued. "If the child survives, it becomes a symbol. If it is shaped by her, it becomes something far worse. A weapon." "No," said another, quieter voice from the shadows. "A successor." That word changed everything. The chamber stirred, because the galaxy could endure the queen. They had learned to survive her. But something born of both human chaos and her absolute power, that was something new, something unknowable, and that terrified them. Far from the council's reach, beyond mapped systems and controlled space, the queen's domain stood untouched. Her palace was not built. It had grown, an immense structure of living metal and organic architecture, pulsing faintly as though it were alive. Towers curved like bones toward the void, and corridors shifted subtly, responding to her will. At its center, the child slept, wrapped in fabrics softer than anything his species had known, beneath a ceiling that shimmered with artificial stars. Eli lay quietly in a bed far too large for him. He had not cried since that day. Not once. Servants watched him from a distance, beings bred only to obey, creatures without fear or doubt. And yet, none of them dared approach too closely, because the queen was always near. She did not leave him alone. Not for long. "Your Majesty." The voice came from the chamber entrance. A general, tall, armored, built for war, stood at the threshold. He did not step inside, not without permission. The queen did not look at him. Her gaze remained on the child. "Speak. The council has issued a formal demand." Silence stretched. "They require the human be surrendered. Immediately." Still, she did not move. They claim it is a threat to galactic stability. A pause. Then finally, they are correct. The general blinked. He hadn't expected that. Then you will comply? The Queen's hand moved, gently adjusting the blanket around the child. No. The answer was quiet, but absolute. The general straightened. Your Majesty, if we refuse, they will act. The Council does not make empty threats. They have made many. And this time, for the first time, she looked at him, cold, unshaken. Let them try. The general lowered his head. The conversation was over. Years passed. The galaxy watched and waited. The child grew. His name was Eli. No one knew who had given it to him, but the Queen used it. That alone made it law. At first, he was small, weak, dependent, like all humans. But he learned quickly, faster than expected, faster than possible. He walked the halls of the palace before most species would have learned to stand. He spoke before others would have formed thought. And he was not afraid. Not of the towering war forms that guarded the gates. Not of the silent watchers that lingered in the dark. Not even of the Queen herself. He ran to her, laughed with her, climbed onto her throne as if it were nothing more than a chair. And the most terrifying part, she allowed it. The first time a visitor saw it, they nearly fled. A warlord from a distant system had come to negotiate terms, tribute, territory, survival. He expected power. He expected fear. What he did not expect was a human child sitting on the Queen's throne, swinging his legs. Who are you? The warlord demanded, his voice trembling despite himself. Eli looked at him curiously. I live here. The warlord turned to the Queen. Your Majesty, this is my son. The words landed like a weapon. The warlord froze. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to run, but he couldn't move, because the Queen wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the child, and in her gaze, there was something no one had ever seen before. Not domination, not calculation, something softer, something dangerous in a completely different way. Later, the general spoke again. You treat him as one of us. No, the Queen replied. She watched as Eli chased a small, floating construct through the chamber, laughing as it darted away. I treat him as something more. The general hesitated. He is human. Yes. They are known for conflict, instability. Yes. Then why? Because he chose me. The general fell silent. He didn't understand. None of them did. But deep within the palace, something was changing. It was subtle. At first, systems began to react to Eli's presence. Doors opened before he reached them. Lights shifted to follow him. Even the living walls seemed to respond, as though recognizing him. At first, it was dismissed. A quirk, a coincidence. But then, there were moments. Small, unexplainable. A broken construct repairing itself when he touched it. A flicker in gravity when he laughed. A silence in the air when he became still. The Queen noticed. Of course she did. She noticed everything. One night, as Eli slept, she stood beside him, watching, waiting. There was no fear in her expression, no doubt, only observation, calculation, understanding, and something else, something deeper, something she had not felt in centuries. A question, because for the first time, the Queen did not know what she had taken, or what it would become. And far across the galaxy, the Council came to a decision. If the Queen would not surrender the child, they would take him. The war they had feared was coming, not because of conquest, not because of power, but because of a single human child. And no one, not even the Queen, realized yet that the galaxy was already too late. The first attempt came in silence. No fleets, no warnings, no declarations from the Galactic Council, because this time they did not want a war. They wanted the child. The Queen's domain had never been breached. Not once. It existed beyond mapped space, hidden behind layers of shifting gravitational fields and living defenses that adapted to every threat. Entire armadas had vanished trying to find it. And yet, something slipped through. It did not arrive like an army. It did not burn through defenses or trigger alarms. It moved between moments. A shadow where there should have been none. A presence that did not belong. Even the palace, alive, aware, ever watchful, hesitated to recognize it. That was the first sign something was wrong. Deep within the inner sanctum, the guards stood motionless. They were not dead. Not exactly. Their bodies remained upright, weapons still in hand. But their eyes were empty. Whatever had passed through them had done so without struggle, without sound, without resistance. The assassin walked among them, unseen, unstoppable. It had no name, no species, no identity that could be traced. The council had chosen well. If brute force could not take the child, then something else would. The queen felt it. Not immediately, not clearly, but something in the air shifted. A disturbance. Subtle. Wrong. She stopped mid-stride in a distant chamber, her gaze turning toward the inner sanctum. Her generals noticed. "Your Majesty." She didn't answer. She was already moving. The assassin reached the final door. Eli's chamber. It paused. Not out of fear, but calculation. Every possibility had been accounted for. Every defense studied. Every outcome predicted. The queen would not arrive in time. The child would not survive. The galaxy would return to balance. The door opened. Eli sat on his bed, awake, not crying, not afraid, just watching. The assassin stepped inside, its form flickering between shapes, unable, or unwilling, to settle into one. "Human," it said, its voice layered, as if multiple beings spoke at once. "You are the galaxy's greatest error." Eli tilted his head. "Why?" The assassin did not answer. It raised its weapon, a device that did not fire energy or matter, but erased. Clean. Instant. Final. Correction is required. Far across the palace, the queen moved faster than anything had ever seen. Walls bent. Doors dissolved. Space itself seemed to fold around her as she crossed impossible distances in seconds. For the first time in centuries, she was not calm. Back in the chamber, the weapon fired. Nothing happened. The assassin froze. The beam, capable of erasing entire beings from existence, hung in the air, suspended, distorted, like reality itself had forgotten how to move. "What?" the assassin whispered. Eli blinked. He looked at the frozen light curiously, then back at the figure in front of him. "I don't like you," he said softly. The air changed. It wasn't visible, not at first, but something pressed down on the room. Heavy, endless, like the weight of a collapsing star. The assassin staggered. Its form flickered violently now. "Impossible. You are human. You are." Eli slid off the bed, barefoot, small, insignificant. He took a step forward. "Don't hurt my mom." The words echoed, not in sound, but in something deeper, something older. The room bent. The walls twisted inward, metal groaning under pressure that did not exist a moment ago. The assassin tried to move. It couldn't. Tried to phase. Failed. Tried to vanish. Nothing responded. "What are you?" it demanded, its voice breaking apart. Eli didn't answer. He just looked at it, and the universe listened. The assassin screamed. Its body collapsed inward, folding like paper crushed by invisible hands. Space warped around it, pulling tighter, until it was gone. Not destroyed, not killed, just removed. Silence. The frozen beam of light dissipated. The pressure vanished. The room snapped back into place. And Eli just stood there, blinking, as if nothing had happened. The door exploded open. The queen arrived. Too late. Her presence filled the chamber instantly, overwhelming, absolute. Her gaze locked onto Eli, scanning, searching, confirming, alive. Then her attention shifted to the empty space where the assassin had been, to the warped edges of reality that hadn't fully settled, to the faint, impossible distortion lingering in the air. She understood. Immediately. Eli. Her voice was different, quieter, careful. The boy turned to her and smiled. "Mom." He ran to her without hesitation, wrapping his arms around her as if the universe hadn't just bent to his will. "I didn't like him," Eli said simply. The queen did not return the embrace right away. Her gaze remained fixed on the room, on the unseen, on the impossible. Then, slowly, she placed a hand on his back. "You are unharmed." He nodded. He was mean. A pause. Then softer. I told him to stop. The Queen closed her eyes. For a fraction of a moment. Across the galaxy, entire species feared her power, her control, her dominance. But this was something else. She looked down at the child in her arms, at the being she had chosen, protected, raised, and for the first time in centuries, the alien queen felt something she had not felt on any battlefield, not against any enemy, not even at the height of war. Uncertainty, not because she doubted him, but because she was beginning to understand. This was no ordinary human child, and whatever he was becoming, even she might not be able to control it. Far away, in the chambers of the Galactic Council, a signal was received. Brief, incomplete, but enough. The assassin had failed, and in its final transmission, one fragment of data repeated over and over. Not human. The Council fell silent, because now they knew. The Queen had not just taken a child. She had awakened something, and the galaxy had just seen the first sign. The Council did not hesitate this time. They had seen enough, heard enough, lost enough. The transmission from the assassin echoed through every chamber, every mind, every system connected to the galactic network. Not human. That was all it took. Emergency protocols were activated. Ancient fleets, long held in reserve, never deployed even in the worst wars, were awakened. Starforges ignited. Weapons capable of tearing apart suns were armed once more, because this was no longer about politics, or territory, or power. This was about survival. He cannot be allowed to grow further, one elder declared, its voice trembling beneath layers of control. The Queen has already defied us, another added. If she refuses again, we do not ask. The chamber fell silent. The decision had been made. Across the galaxy, warships moved. Hundreds at first, then thousands. An armada unlike anything seen in recorded history began to form. Ships of every design, every species, every technological era. Some were sleek and silent. Others were massive, ancient constructs that bent space simply by existing. All of them carried one purpose. Take the child. At the edge of the Queen's domain, reality shifted. Her defenses reacted instantly, gravitational fields tightening, living structures awakening, entire regions of space folding inward to hide her territory. But this time, it wasn't enough. The armada pushed through. Slowly, painfully, but inevitably, because the galaxy had decided. Within the palace, the Queen stood before a vast viewing chamber. The stars beyond it flickered as the incoming fleet distorted space itself. Her generals gathered behind her. "Your Majesty," one said carefully, "they have committed everything." "I see that. They will not stop." "No." A pause. Then, "Neither will I." Behind her, small footsteps echoed. Eli entered the chamber. He was older now, still a child, but no longer fragile in the way he once had been. His eyes reflected the stars, the fleet, the war. "Mom." The Queen did not turn. "They are here for you." Eli looked at the endless ships filling the void. So many. There was no fear in his voice, only curiosity. "Why?" The Queen was silent for a moment. Then, "Because they are afraid." The first message arrived seconds later. It did not come as sound, or a light, but as a direct transmission into the mind of every being within her domain. A voice vast and cold. "Alien Queen, surrender the human child. This is your final warning." The chamber darkened. Even the palace itself seemed to recoil. Eli frowned. That was loud. The Queen stepped forward. Her presence expanded, pushing back against the pressure of the armada, of the message, of the galaxy itself. "I do not accept your authority." Her reply was not sent. It was felt. The fleet reacted instantly. Weapons charged. Thousands of them. Energy built across the void. Beams capable of erasing planets. Missiles that bent time. Constructs designed to collapse entire regions of space. "Your Majesty," a general said, his voice tight, "they are preparing to fire." "Let them." Eli stepped closer. "They're going to hurt you." "They will try." The boy was quiet for a moment. Then, "I don't want them to." The first shot was fired. A beam of pure annihilation tore through through space toward the palace. Then another, and another. A storm of destruction, unstoppable, absolute. The queen raised her hand. The palace responded. Defenses surged. But before they could engage, Eli moved. Wait. The word wasn't loud. It wasn't powerful. It was just spoken. And everything stopped. The beams froze mid-flight. Weapons locked in place. The armada, thousands of ships, halted as if the universe itself had paused. Even the stars seemed to dim. The queen turned. Slowly. For the first time. She hadn't acted first. Eli walked past her, out into the open chamber, facing the endless fleet beyond the barrier. So small. So insignificant. Against everything the galaxy had to offer. I don't want to fight, he said. His voice carried, not through sound, but through something deeper. Something that reached every ship, every mind, every being watching. At first, there was silence. Then, laughter. He thinks this is a choice. A child. A human child. End this. Weapons tried to fire again. They couldn't. Systems failed. Energy dissipated. Commands were ignored. Eli tilted his head, confused. Why are they still trying? The pressure returned. Stronger this time. Heavier. Not uncontrolled. Not chaotic. But focused. The nearest warship bent, its hull creaking under invisible force. Then another. And another. Not destroyed. Not attacked. Just held. Across the fleet, panic spread. What is happening? We've lost control. Something is. Eli closed his eyes, and the universe obeyed. Ships stopped moving. Completely. Weapons powered down. Engines fell silent. Even the smallest systems, lights, sensors, internal processes, paused. It wasn't destruction. It wasn't violence. It was something far worse. Control. Eli opened his eyes. Please go away. The words were simple, gentle, almost kind, and the armada obeyed. One by one, ships turned, not by choice, not by command, but because something deeper told them to. Retreat. Within moments, the greatest fleet ever assembled began to withdraw. Silently. Completely. Without a single shot fired. Inside the palace, no one spoke. No one moved. The queen watched. Understanding. This was no longer a threat. No longer a possibility. No longer a question. It was reality. She looked down at the child standing before her. At the being who had just stopped a war, without lifting a weapon. Without anger. Without effort. Eli. He turned to her. They were mean. A pause. Then softer. But I didn't hurt them. The queen nodded slowly. Yes. Across the galaxy. The council received the final reports. No damage. No casualties. No explanation. Only one conclusion. They had attacked. And something had told them to stop. And they had listened. The silence that followed was deeper than fear. Deeper than war. Because now, finally, the galaxy understood. The queen had not made a mistake. She had changed the balance of existence itself. And there was nothing they could do to stop what came next. The galaxy did not recover. Not from that day. Not from what they had witnessed. An entire armada, thousands of ships, armed with weapons that could erase worlds, had been stopped. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Stopped. By a child. No explosions. No casualties. No war. Just obedience. The reports spread across every system, every species, every intelligence network. At first, they were dismissed. Then questioned. Then verified. Again and again. Until there was no denying it. Something had changed. Something fundamental. The Galactic Council convened in silence. No arguments. No shouting. No panic. That had all passed. What remained was something far worse. Understanding. We cannot fight this. One elder said quietly. No, another agreed. We cannot. A third voice, older than most, spoke from the shadows. Then we must understand it. Data flooded the chamber. Everything they had on humans. Everything they had on the queen. Everything they had on the child. At first, it made no sense. Humans were not unique in strength. Not in intelligence. Not in biology. They were fragile. Short-lived. Divided. A species that should never have risen beyond its own world. And yet, They had. Search deeper, the elder commanded. Beyond current records. Beyond galactic archives. There was a pause. Then, accessing restricted human data. What they found was not meant to be seen. Ancient transmissions, fragmented logs, the earliest observations of humanity, recorded by probes long lost to time. Most of it was dismissed back then, considered irrelevant, primitive. But now it was different. A recording flickered to life in the center of the chamber. Grainy, unstable, a human child, laughing. Subject displays unusual neurological activity. A voice from the past said, brain patterns inconsistent with baseline models. Another voice, uncertain. It's reacting to imagination stimuli. Define. A pause. Then, it is altering localized probability fields. Silence filled the council chamber. That's not possible, one elder whispered. It was dismissed, another replied. At the time, it was considered an anomaly, a misreading. More recordings followed. Children. Always children. Small fluctuations at first. Coincidences. Objects moving without cause. Events aligning too perfectly. Reality bending. Why were these reports ignored? Someone demanded. Because they stopped, came the answer. As humans aged, the phenomena diminished. Stabilized. Then why? The realization hit all at once. They don't lose it, the elder in the shadows said slowly. They suppress it. The chamber went still. Human children are not weak, the elder continued. They are uncontained. Limitless potential, constrained by development, environment, and self-perception. Another voice added, trembling, and he was raised by the queen. No suppression, no limitation, no fear. The council finally understood. Eli was not an anomaly. He was what a human could become, without limits. Far beyond the council's reach, the queen stood in silence. Eli slept in her arms, peaceful, unaware. The palace had grown quieter, not out of fear, but out of something closer to reverence. Even the living structure seemed to recognize him now, to respond to him, to listen. The queen looked down at him, at the child who had ended a war without violence, who had bent reality with a thought, who still clung to her as if she were the only thing that mattered. "What are you?" she asked softly. Eli stirred, his eyes opened slowly, still heavy with sleep. He looked up at her and smiled. "I'm yours." The answer was simple, innocent, complete. For a moment, the queen said nothing. Then carefully, she placed her hand over his back, holding him closer. "Then I will protect you." But even as she said it, she knew. The truth had already spread. The galaxy had seen, understood, feared, and fear always led to action. In the deepest parts of space, far from the council, far from the queen, something else awakened. Not a fleet, not an empire, something older. It had watched the rise of civilizations, the fall of stars, the balance of existence itself. And now, it turned its attention toward a single point, a single presence. Eli. For the first time in ages, it felt something. Curiosity. Back in the council chamber, the final decision was made. Not of war, not of destruction, but of survival. "We do not provoke the child," one elder said. "We do not engage." Another added, "We do not interfere." A pause. Then the final declaration. "We observe." The galaxy held its breath, because for the first time, they were not afraid of the queen. They were afraid of what she loved. Final line. The alien queen once ruled through fear. But now, the galaxy feared the child she called her son.